creepy, and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
This magician once made his entire audience vanish, and they were not found until decades later. In the 1970s, a legendary Las Vegas illusionist named Chupapi Muñaño performed night show in front of packed theaters across the Strip. He was famous for how dumb he was at believing that his vanishings were mysterious and believable, therefore, filling big theaters for his shows that were more a comedy show. Horses, pianos, even cars gone in a blink, at least in his mind. But on the infamous night of October 32nd, 1975, Chupapi ended his show with something no one had seen before. More than 1,200 people were inside the theaters when he stepped to center stage and asked the crowd to cover their eyes and count backward from 10. They never reached 9. In an instant, every person in the audience was gone. The seats were empty. The aisles were silent. The theater looked abandoned. Several backstage workers later claimed they saw Chupapi rush through a service exit and climb into a waiting limousine that sped away into the desert. He was never seen again. Then, in 1999, an archaeologist named Ben Dover uncovered a
Ben Dover?
buried
Come
chamber
on, yeah, this is a
deep
joke.
within an Egyptian pyramid containing thousands of humans' remains, along with large animals and strange modern objects. Investigators eventually linked the discovery to Chupapi, but he was never found.
Yeah, okay, Chupapi.
I've been waiting so long to make this video. What is CERN? So all the top physicists in the world are basically more or less trying to disprove God. And they're trying to disprove God by figuring out how the Big Bang happened and what matter is made of. They want to know what subatomic particles make up protons, neutrons, and electrons. So to try to isolate this subatomic matter, they've created an 18-mile long particle collider where they smash particles at the speed of light and see what happens. They don't know what's going to really happen. They don't know what the outcome of these experiments is actually going to be. They just want to see. CERN themselves, who also have a logo that is conspicuously very similar to 666. Anyways, CERN themselves have admitted that they don't know if this could potentially unlock different dimensions or create antimatter or mini black holes. So I know you want to find comfort. So what you're doing is you're going to your search engines, you're going to your AI chatbots, and you're going to try to disprove what I'm telling you right now. I'm just going to say your initial search is going to pick this up as nothing more than conspiracy. But if you use the correct prompts, you can find that every single thing I say in this video is 100% correct. These people are trying to develop a technology powerful enough to destroy the universe, but what's particularly unnerving is right outside the entrance, right at the front gate of CERN, is a statue of Shiva, who is the Hindu god of destruction. It's right in your face. And it's not just the tinfoil hat community. Here's Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, who is an astrophysicist with 25 years at the University of Geneva. She's wrote 12 books, published 158 articles. Here's her voicing her concerns over CERN.
I said, so how many dimensions officially are living in the CERN? And they both said 17. And there's zero proof that they bring that they give something, there's some document. And they said that this entity the second time took a scarf. So this same Gotthard tunnel was inaugurated for traversing this just beside the Bridge of the Devil. And during the inauguration, our official politicians were standing there looking at the CERN open door with angels and demons going through it, and very crazy, naked, looking naked dance.
They'll never succeed. Christ is king.
What is that, and why are they eating it? I've eaten at elite dinners my entire life, and I've never seen chicken look like that. Why is it slightly pink, and why are billionaires flying to a private island to eat it?
What do you think that is? Let me know in the comments.
Do angels kill? I read somewhere a single angel killed 180,000 in one day.
That's the part of the mechanism in the Old Testament. They can, but they only do it when God tells them to do it. So in the past, the angels could kill entire segments of population, God permitting. You have to wipe out the adults because they're doing the evil and they're going to cause evil and you're going to get sucked into the evil. The problem is that the demons that are afflicting the parents are also start affecting the kids and get attached to the kids. And so even if you let the kids leave, you're going to have a problem with it later.
This whole interview is fascinating.
We also found something to this day. There's not one scientist that can figure it out.
Really?
We think it's a wormhole.
What? So you saw something go in it?
No, come out of it.
Oh, come out of it.
And not just one, multiple things.
Whoa.
Some sort of cloud that opens and closes and multiple objects coming out of it. And also what we did is we triangulated. So we had cameras on the coast of California and across in Catalina Island and a third location.
Wow.
So from 3 locations, we were capturing data. And then we had radar validate the cameras exactly in that location.
So you saw some UFOs. Wow.
That is how CIA smuggles gold, guns, drugs, cash, and small children.
Here it comes.
And coming back to this whole issue of war against the Russians, you know, this is all a fabrication. I mean, the Swedes were making up Russian submarines in order to get the public afraid of the Russians. It's not the Russians that have 1,000 military bases all over the seas, all over the world. It's the Americans. And by the way, the reason we have 1,000 military bases is not for military power. They're lily pads for smuggling. That is how CIA smuggles gold, guns, drugs, cash, and small children for the elites in the United States. War is a profit center, not just for oil. War produces body parts. It produces orphans. It produces all kinds of human goods that can then be trafficked. And the banks rely on war and drugs for their cash flow, for their liquidity.
Robert David Steele, that's his name. He was ahead of his time.
I've had a ton of encounters. I'll just say this. I've talked to some of the most respected exorcists in the country. I've been working with them and things have happened, like really scary. And if that's happening and that's real, which is more real than anything I've ever experienced, then the other is definitely real too.
If there are supernatural forces that are evil acting on people, which there are, and I've experienced them personally, then that's proof of God. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not faith to me anymore. It's fact. There's just no other way to look at it.
Who owns iShowSpeed? Who's making him the face of FIFA, making an anime about him, and making money every time he does something like this?
The same people behind
Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Harry Styles, Dua Lipa, Ariana Grande, Sabrina Carpenter, Post Malone, Miley Cyrus, Will Smith, Steven Spielberg, and even Cristiano Ronaldo, and Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris.
Here's iShowSpeed with Kefir Goldberg, Scott and Michael Ratner, Emil Marachi, and Mason Klein. Speed's whole team is run by Mason Klein. That's his manager. It's not just one person. It's a club that separates celebrities from just influencers.
Everyone that follows me already knows the guy who used to run Paramount
Founded Awesomeness TV. His company managed Logan Paul and did a show featuring him named Foursome. This Logan Paul. He was managed by Awesomeness TV's head of content, Jeff Levin. Jeff Levin, Logan Paul's manager till this day. The guy who made Awesomeness TV is now making an anime with iShowSpeed.
They raised $100 million from these companies, including Creative Artist Agency,
which happens to manage booking for iShowSpeed and everybody you see on screen right now. Founded by Michael Ovitz, Ron Mayer, Phil Haber, Michael S. Rosenfield, and Roland Perkin. Majority owned by Francois Pinault, same guy behind Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent. And iShowSpeed's music?
All his music goes through Warner Records, owned by Len Blavatnik,
who's friends with almost every politician from every party.
Gave $1 million to Trump, close friends with Netanyahu, gives his money to Obama, Mitch McConnell, Marco Rubio, and used to run Rusal with Oleg Deripaska, the guy that helped create the country Montenegro. Speed built his audience, but once you hit a certain level, Hollywood doesn't discover you, they package you.
Guess what they all have in common? But if you don't like the Hollywood industry, make your own media company. Think about it for my investing community.
He's the streamer, by the way, if you don't know.
Our shadow people, How come they come in and out of our lives? And some people are absolutely terrified, and you should be, because these are not good beings. This video is for entertainment purposes only. What we need to understand and get our heads around is that the supernatural world is real. And sometimes entities will manifest, shadow people. People see them all the time. It's never a happy ending. People don't go away going, wow, I just had an experience with a shadow person. It was really lovely. They're terrified. Why? Because you're picking up on something incredibly evil. Incredibly evil. Folks, the supernatural world is real. It surrounds us, and it's manifesting in ways that I've never seen. Why? Because in my opinion, we are headed towards something. And that event, I don't believe was a good event, but we're headed towards something. I feel something has shifted in the last several months. I am on red alert. I don't know what's coming, but whatever it is, it's not a happy ending. I am L.A. Marzulli.
If you think time travel is impossible, here are some stories that might change your mind. Part 2. First up is CERN. CERN is, of course, home to the Large Hadron Collider, where particles are smashed together at nearly the speed of light to study reality at its smallest levels. But according to this theory, CERN was doing more than uncovering the secrets of the universe and may have accidentally altered our reality itself or shifted us into a different timeline altogether. People have connected CERN's experiments with the Mandela effect, distorted memories, bizarre coincidences, and the growing feeling that the world had somehow been different since 2012. But with the recent shutdown to upgrade the power of the LHC, a lot of people are saying that the world has started to feel normal again. That is until the LHC restarts in 2030. The Vanishing Hotel. In 1979, two British couples were driving through France en route to Spain when they stopped at an old-fashioned hotel that seemed completely out of place. The building was lit up by oil lamps, the rooms had wooden doors with simple latches, the furnishings seemed antiquated, and the staff wore period clothing that just belonged to another era. And after spending the night, the couples continued on to Spain for their vacation, but 2 weeks later, on their way back to England, they retraced the route and attempted to stay at the same hotel because they liked it so much. But it was gone. They repeatedly searched the road where it was, but they couldn't find any trace of the building anywhere. And to add to the weirdness, the photographs that they remembered taking inside the hotel never appeared on their developed film. Did they go through a time slip into a different period in history? Next is Victor Goddard's future airfield. In 1935, RAF officer Victor Goddard flew over the abandoned Drem airfield in Scotland. The facility was overgrown, deserted, and falling into disrepair. Later, though, while flying through an intense storm, Goddard found himself passing over the same airfield. But this time, it looked fully operational when it shouldn't have been. He noticed that there were mechanics down below wearing blue overalls working on these unfamiliar yellow aircraft which sat on the runway. The storm then passed, and Goddard continued on his flight. And years later, Drem Airfield reopened. RAF mechanics began wearing those blue uniforms, and the training aircraft there were painted that same yellow color that Goddard claimed to have witnessed. Did the storm somehow throw Goddard temporarily into the future? Sergei Ponomarenko. So in 2006, there was this story of a confused man in his mid-20s appearing on the streets of Kyiv wearing clothing that looked like it was from the Soviet era. He wound up getting arrested for suspicious behavior, and the authorities found his ID, which said he was born in 1932, which would be impossible based on how young he looked. When asked what year it was, Ponomarenko insisted that it was the year 1958. He explained that he had been taking photographs with his camera when he noticed a strange disc-shaped object in the sky. After photographing it, he suddenly found himself standing in the same city, but everything had changed. According to the story, he was still carrying his camera, and when his film was processed, they showed Kyiv during the 1950s, the mysterious object that he talked about in the sky, and also an image of Ponomarenko standing near it.
Wow.
I stopped wearing a bra 3 years ago when I read Sydney Singer's book, Dressed to Kill, and found out that you get a 21-fold greater increase in breast cancer if you wear a bra. And
think about that. Wearing a bra increases your chances of having breast cancer.
Makes perfect sense because the boobs are...
Let me guess. They can't drain the lymph nodes?
Mostly fat and lymphatic fluid, and they drain in your armpits. So if you're holding them in with a bra, then you can't drain that area like it should. Now, I know there's a lot of girls out there with big tatas. They're like, there's no way I'm not wearing a bra. My boobs are too big. Nature doesn't really give a fuck what you think about how you look. It only gives a fuck about how it is able to do its job. And if your boobs aren't able to move around and slosh and drain the lymphatic fluid like they're supposed to, then yeah, you're going to be creating some inflammation in those areas. I only wear a bra if it's a special occasion and I have a certain dress I gotta wear or a certain shirt I gotta wear, and it's literally for like 2 or 3 hours and then I take it off. But when you wear them...
That's crazy.
for 12 to 24 hours a day and you've been wearing them for 40 years, that's going to have a much different impact than just wearing them every once in a while. So as much
It's kind of like eating sweets or chocolate. Doing it once or twice, doing it in moderation is okay, but too much, you can cause problems.
as you can go without a bra, just try it and see. My boobs have gotten perkier. I used to have stretch marks on my boobs from nursing. Those are now going away. And it's because I'm not wearing a bra anymore. The muscles in that area have to work to hold themselves up.
Now, if you couldn't tell, I don't have a dog in this fight. I believe what's most important is having the knowledge, having the ability for you to decide how you want to live your life. I bet there are people here who never even knew this. Maybe there's some of you who have known this. And if you are a part of the group who has known this for a long time, please comment below and let me know what your experience has been with this.
All right, ladies, let me know how you feel about this in the comment.
Rabbit holes that are guaranteed to keep you awake tonight. In the 12th century England, 2 children with green skin came out of a cave and no one knew who they were or where they came from. The Ben stone. Egyptians worshipped a mysterious conical stone said to have fallen from the stars. It served as the architectural prototype for all pyramids, so they say, allegedly, acting as a resonator for celestial energies. What was this stone and where did it come from? This manuscript contains images that makes no sense, plants and constellations that do not exist on Earth, and scholars cannot understand who wrote it or how it was written, and it really makes no sense whatsoever, but yet it does. The Saturn Moon Matrix. This goes along with the theory that Earth might just be a huge, base for aliens to experiment on us, and they actually made us and we have no idea, and Saturn is like a satellite that artificial transmits frequencies back and forth to their planet, basically. The immortal Count Saint Germain was an 18th century alchemist who reportedly never aged and appeared in multiple areas. He really appeared all over the world, really. Witnesses claimed he possessed the elixir of life, performing feats of transmutation that defied the known laws of chemistry and physics. Was he Dracula? And last, but certainly not least, the Gnostic Archons, the ultimate rabbit hole, is the realization that the material world is a prison constructed by parasitic interdimensional entities, kind of like the Matrix, called Archons. These rulers feed on human emotional energy and manipulate historic events to maintain and control the mind. In other words, remember when Bob Lazar talked about how we were just containers? Yeah, we're just containers, and then when we die, they get this energy from us, and they feed off of it, basically. That's it. Are these actually just conspiracy theories, or does some of these stories actually have some merit to them? Also, if you would like me to make a longer video on some of these, leave it in the comments. Comments really help the page. I really appreciate y'all.
Did you guys hear what China is doing in preps for a big war?
Oh gosh.
In the desert in China, they have laid out Taiwanese buildings. They've laid out U.S. fighter ships. They've laid out the port in Japan where the U.S. is stationed, and they are actively bombing those things.
Oh, goodness gracious.
You can see the roads are mapped out.
Yeah.
They have soldiers out there doing drills of how to invade the palace. They are fully preparing for an invasion of Taiwan and invading the ports in Japan.
Oh boy.
This wouldn't be too hard for China, would it?
The U.S. would fully defend, and all the allied nations would as well.
The buildup's been happening for a long time, right?
Taiwan basically has their independence from communist China, and China is like, no, you guys still belong to China. But who knows?
I'm torn.
Yeah, it's your people.
America has the same thing, folks. Even full interior builds for clearing.
Hitler was of the Rothschild bloodline. I found out that Scotland was very important to all of this, and I just highlighted some of the Scottish clans that were involved in the Illuminati. These are Illuminati members that I'm showing you here that are representatives of the different bloodlines. The DuPonts, for instance, have been in charge of a large portion of military-industrial complex. They produced the gunpowder for all of our wars. So every war that we've had, they've gotten incredibly rich. They also are into a lot of the chemicals. Every day you use chemicals that came out of DuPont factories. The Freeman family and Gaylord Freeman, head of the Priory of Zion. This is the Kennedys, Here we see JFK at the Great Pyramid. This is Anton LaVey with one of the members of his church, Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was part of Rat Pack, which were working with the intelligence agencies and were Satanists. One of his slaves, James Mansfield, is there kneeling down before Anton LaVey in a satanic ritual. And here was the first presidential model sexual slave that they allowed the public to see. This is Marilyn Monroe. She was both James Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe had sexual relations with John F. Kennedy. And here I believe that you can see her switching personalities. This is Winthrop, who's said to have the largest porn collection in the world. This is Guy de Rothschild, very powerful man. His bloodline will have the Antichrist, and that's his son, David. And here you see Bill Clinton. This is a hypnotic induction for a mind-controlled slave. Then you have William Huntington Russell and Samuel Russell, which tie back into your slave trade. These Illuminati families have been involved in slavery for a long time.
War is a rich man's game and moneymaker.
Every time the machine breaks down, and it breaks down like clockwork, the same things appear right before it happens. And I want you to see them for yourself, because by the time we get to the end, I think you're going to recognize every single one.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss.
Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Singing in the Rain, Ben-Hur, Vertigo, Sunset Boulevard. The Dream Factory was not a cynical name. The machine actually worked. It housed directors and writers and actors in a well-funded, structured, stable environment and got world-class cinema out the other side, consistently, for decades. But while the Dream Factory is running at full power, something arrives in American living rooms that scares the studios to death. Television. In 1946, 90 million Americans go to the movies every single week. But by 1969, that number is 17 million. Television doesn't compete with cinema, it dismantles the habit of going. And the studio's first instinct, and this will sound very familiar, is not to adapt, it's to fight. Several major studios refused to license their films for broadcast, and many lobbied Congress against the boob tube. But when lawyers failed, they did the only thing they knew how to do. Make it bigger. If television can put an ordinary film in your living room for free, well, we'll make them so big that a little box can't contain them. Enter the widescreen format, 4-hour runtimes, the intermission, cinemas as event rather than habit, and for a moment, it really works. 1965, The Sound of Music, an $8 million budget, generates $285 million.
Graf Zeppelin.
What? That's crazy, man.
Compiled an outstanding safety record for the era. The Graf Zeppelin flew over 1 million miles and carried more than 13,000 passengers without a single passenger fatality in regular commercial service for a long stretch of its career. Even the Hindenburg disaster itself, it went down in a big fiery inferno. The humanity, the perfectly captured shot. Roughly 64% survival rate for the Hindenburg. In the context, of the 97 people on board the Hindenburg, 62 people survived. That is roughly, again, a 64% survival rate. In the context of 1930s aviation, that is remarkably high. Most serious airplane crashes of the same period and today had far lower survivability, often under 30% and sometimes much, much lower. Because airplanes tend to hit the ground at high speeds. Airships, even when things went wrong, often descended more slowly. People had time to jump, to climb down ropes, or to ride sections of the ship down. There were, of course, deadly airship accidents. The USS Akron lost most of its crew when it went into the sea in bad weather. However, that wasn't so much as an airship fault. That was a bad piloting error. That was a bad captain decision. But the overall survivability profile of airships in that period was significantly better than that of contemporary fixed-wing aircraft.
You know, Hindenburg was a clown show. They fuel with hydrogen. Airships use helium.
A car fell off a cliff into the archaeological site of Marais in Peru. Luckily, no one was hurt. But it did distract from something even crazier. A long-range drone was flown deep into the Atacama Desert and found this. A 2,500-year-old geoglyph that's going to make your geometry and history teacher want to quit their job. Context. These are not the geoglyphs that Nazca is famous for, the pictures of the animals and stuff. You've probably seen those, but what's rarely shown are these kilometer-long lines. They're not just in flat desert, they're on top of mountains. Some with the top cut off of them. Despite this difficulty, they can only be seen from the air. There's not just a few, there's thousands in inhospitable desert, and we keep finding more. The method to create them is pretty straightforward. Scrape away the oxidized layer of desert, reveal the white vanilla texture underneath. Construction's not the problem, geometry is. We usually see the cool animals and the spirals that give off a little more primitive vibe. That fits the timeline and the culture. These don't. Why are we practicing advanced geometry in a remote part of an arid desert only visible from the sky? And you know what? I could have lived with most of these questions until I saw this guy. To the untrained eye, it is a cool looking combination of shapes, but that is not what it is. It is 6 different geometric patterns that cannot be created without using the other patterns as a reference. That's called a geometric construction. The ancient world called this sacred geometry. It was sacred because it could be observed at any scale of the universe, which is why it was incorporated in temples from ancient Greece to ancient India, which is where things get weird. Kalachakra is an advanced philosophical, spiritual framework from ancient India. Mandala can be constructed using this glyph from 10,000 miles away. If we go a little north, the Pyramid of Teotihuacan can also be constructed with the glyph. Since it's a harmonic shape, you can also make it using the patterns that sound creates as it travels through water. All of that insane. If you don't know the other mysteries, like how they could bend rocks, probably by using their 30% larger cranial capacity, which we only know because they mummified their people just like in ancient Egypt. Also revered blue eyes like the entire ancient world did for some reason. They even built a bunch of pyramids too, like in Corral. Look, we know they were super, super smart, but none of this fits. I think it's pretty safe to say we have no idea what was going on here.
Yeah. You know what? Frequency is necessary to create the shape.
I interviewed a brain surgeon who'd done over 1,000 brain surgeries and studied the brain. And he's also a PhD in neuroscience. So he studies the mind and thoughts, and he was a brain surgeon. And I said, what's the number one skill you feel like human beings should learn to master? And his answer was beautiful. He said emotional regulation. And I was like, I 100% agree. Because if we don't have the power to regulate our feelings around a situation, an environment, something that happens, an event, then that event has power over us as opposed to us over that moment. And if it has power over us to where we react so strongly, we need to ask ourselves, why am I so triggered? That's a wound somewhere. Where is that wound? And how can I start the healing journey? I'm not saying that things are going to happen in life and you're never going to feel something, but just not react and be overwhelmed emotionally to where it takes you away from love and takes you away from your mission.
This was such a sound advice.
The experts tell us this is the remains of an ice flow in southern Washington. So now ice flows in addition to volcanoes. Are you really going to keep going along with this silliness? Maybe it was easy for us to go along with it at first. I mean, how can the ants hope to know that they're building their colony on top of a massive tree stump? It's hard to get a good perspective when we're way down there as to just how massive the world around you is. Like our friends the ants, how are we to know? The globalist parasites that run this world want us to be kept as nothing more than good little worker drones They want us working blissfully and obediently in their little ant farm. The lies we have been taught, the lies we have been told, that serve as that invisible wall in our illusion of freedom we have in this realm. Why lie to us? Because
Wow,
a
look at
prisoner that doesn't see their cage has no clue they're in prison. Ancient volcanoes, basalt, hexagonal spewing volcanoes.
Wow, look at that.
And all the other silly excuses. I know what you have been told. We have all got the same government-funded propaganda. I mean education. Current events, history, geology, biology, religion. All nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. The truth is out there. You just have to question everything, friends. Until next.
A free black woman decided to buy her husband out of slavery so they could live their lives peacefully together. But one day they got into a very heated argument, and since she technically still owned him, she decided to sell him to a white man. She later tried to change her mind and buy him back from a man named Colonel, but he refused. The woman who made this mistake name was Dilsey Pope.
Ain't no way. Ain't no motherfucking way. No. I thought it was an AI-generated bull. Dilsey and her spouse had a heated argument. In a fit of rage, she sold her husband to a white neighbor. Oh my God. Man, that is... Whew. Do you understand the anger in your soul that you would have to have over arguments? Knowing during that time what happened to slaves, what slaves went through, how fucked up it was. To sell your husband back into slavery over an argument? God, that's like way above petty. That's way above spite. That's way above, oh my God, that's, oh Lord.
An autonomous drone just chased down a moth in midair and killed it. No net, no spray. It's called Tourniol, a 40-gram micro drone from a French startup backed by Y Combinator. Frankly, that moth was just practice. Its real target is the mosquito, the animal that kills the most humans on Earth, around 700,000 people every year. The trick is sonar. The drone fires ultrasonic pulses and listens with tiny microphones. Every wing beat leaves a Doppler fingerprint so it can tell a mosquito from a bee. No chemicals. And here's the wild part. The drone is the weapon. It locks on and rams straight into its target. Co-founder Alex Toussaint calls it a big step toward wiping out mosquitoes. The vision, just 10 of these drones patrolling a square kilometer, slashing the cost of mosquito control 100-fold, and maybe helping end malaria for good. A home version's already coming, built for your backyard. Would you trust a drone to keep your yard mosquito free?
I had a case with a woman who was possessed. I was in an airport and she calls me and she says, "Hey, I'm pinned and I can't move." I just said, "Well, I can't do it now, but my flight's only about an hour. I'll call you in about an hour." And then I just mentally said to the guardian angel of my priesthood, "Go and help her." An hour flight later, I get off the plane, call her back, and I said, "Are you still pinned?" She says, "Yes, I'm still pinned." So then I just said a couple of binding prayers. Boom, the demon let right away. And then she just hangs up on me. 5 minutes later, she calls back and she says, "Well, the reason I hung up is because I hadn't been to the bathroom in 5 hours." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair enough." And then she said, "And by the way, did you send the guardian angel of your priesthood to me?" And I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" He said he appeared to me and held my hand during this whole episode. The fact that I was able to mentally communicate that with my guardian angel is an indicator that they can hear our thoughts. The primary way that they get involved in our lives is by our asking them. Sometimes people will say, "Well, my guardian angel doesn't do anything." I'm like, "Well, how much do you communicate with the guy?"
Okay, is the guardian angel concept biblical? Like found anywhere in the scripture? Anyone, please leave a comment.
Men at age 40 today have more testosterone than a male who is 20. And that's crazy, right? Like that's when they should be optimized. So in young males from 1999 to 2016, average testosterone levels dropped nearly 25%. So they looked at this data. It was 4,000 plus men ages 15 to 40. Testosterone deficiency now affects an estimated 20% of young adult men ages 15 to 39. And this is not just a problem of aging men anymore because we know that testosterone declines as we age. However, testosterone levels in men have been declining about 1% per year for decades. A 30-year-old man today may have testosterone level of an 85-year-old man from 15 years ago. Medical community is still saying 300 to 400 is normal for a man. That's normal for an 85-year-old. Teenage boys can have testosterone levels of 2,500 at times, and men in their 20s, the same thing. So now we've got 40-year-old men walking around at 300 and being told that they're fine. Y'all, they're exhausted. They have estrogen bellies. They're insulin resistant. This is not fine.
Scientists just figured out how to reverse aging with AI. And this is a massive breakthrough. We can now reprogram any human cell back to age 20. Heart cells, skin cells, brain cells, all reset to their biological prime. And here's the wildest part. The technology to do this has existed since 2012. It won the Nobel Prize. But the real breakthrough wasn't possible until this year when they supercharged it with AI. It's a wild story. So in 2006, scientists discovered Yamanaka factors. They're proteins that can basically convert any normal cell into a universal stem cell. Now, this discovery was a huge deal because these stem cells are basically like magic healers. If you have torn muscle tissue, you can inject these stem cells into the area and they will turn into the youthful muscle cells that you need. So Yamanaka factors were an insane breakthrough because they allowed any human to turn any cell you already have into a magic healer. But there was one big problem. It turns out the original Yamanaka factors weren't very good at this stem cell conversion. They could do it, but they just weren't reliable enough to make a product. Enter OpenAI. And this is where things get crazy. OpenAI designed a special AI model built specifically to create new proteins. Think of it like ChatGPT, but for protein engineering. So they took all the original Yamanaka research and gave it to this AI model to go ham on improving it. And guess what happened? Their new version is 50 times more effective than the original. They tested it on 50-year-old cells, and it successfully started repairing 30% of the cells in just 7 days. And this isn't science fiction, this actually happened. And it sounds crazy, but in a few years, humans will be able to take a shot that literally reverses the age of their cells. Shout out science.
While demolishing a building in London in 1912, construction workers uncovered one of the greatest jewelry discoveries of all time. Beneath the floor, they found a box that had been hidden for nearly 300 years, and inside were 400 pieces of perfectly preserved jewelry from the 15 and 1600s. This included diamond rings, as well as jeweled brooches, and even a watch carved from a single Colombian emerald. Historians believe it was the hidden stock of a wealthy jeweler in Cheapside, which was London's luxury shopping district at the time. And around 1640, as England headed towards civil war, he hid the jewels for safekeeping, but never returned. The discovery is significant because it shows just how connected the world already was 400 years ago. Because in the box were diamonds from India, turquoise from Persia, and rubies from Myanmar, showing that London jewelers were already sourcing gems from across the globe. It's also an amazing snapshot of what wealthy people were wearing at the time, since almost no everyday jewelry from that period survives today, because most pieces were melted down for their gold or remade as fashions changed. It's known as the Cheapside Hoard, and it's considered one of the finest collections of Elizabethan and Jacobean jewelry ever discovered. I want to hear from you. Had you heard of this discovery, and what do you think of the style of jewelry?
Breathtaking. No, haven't heard about it.
One who serves in CIA told me recently a coworker had killed himself. The coworker got sideways with the agency, and the agency used his psychological profile, which they were obviously familiar with, to drive him to suicide. Do you think that that's plausible?
Yes, I do. When I first got to the CIA, I overheard two psychiatrists from the CIA's Office of Medical talking about how to push an employee over the edge so that he would either resign, have to go on a mental leave, or commit suicide.
And these are licensed physicians talking about this?
We used to call a lot of them Dr. Mengele.
Yeah, for good reason.
2029 is the year Phil Schneider says aliens are going to finally rise up and take over the Earth. He believes they'll kill about 8% of the population in the process. Not sure what happens to the rest of us. Now, Phil made this prediction sometime around 1995, and you may not believe him, but get this. In 1972, NASA launches their space probe Pioneer 10 through our atmosphere and into our solar system. It snaps photos of Jupiter and even reaches Neptune. NASA is able to download these photos through radio waves sent back and forth between their base and the probe. But the transmissions don't stop there. The radio waves continue past Pioneer 10 and go deeper into space. In 2023, University of California, Berkeley scientists figure out that the transmissions reached another star 27 light years away. And that actually happened back in 2002. If some alien race around that star caught that signal, it would take years for us to get their response. Berkeley did the math. The earliest it would hit Earth is 2029. So, whether you trust fringe sources like Phil or legit science, 2029 could be a big year for aliens.
Life is not for living. That's the biggest lie. If life is for living, that none of this makes sense. Whatever we're going to do here, whatever we're going to build, whether it's castles or families, we're not going to take with us. So as we've been here, so we shall go away. And there is very little meaning of it. But if there is a discovery, if this is a school that we came for, then the whole thing takes a different approach and meaning, which means for me to be in practice in life, in the sense that I'm calling the shots. My likes and dislikes will direct the process, and I don't want it to be corrupted again, but more an openness and an application, throwing myself into the evolutionary washing machine to allow it to act upon me. And then naturally you will let go of what's not important. Certain muscles or certain concepts or certain ideas about aging or about looking in the mirror or why I do things or the type of conversations that I have, the type of love that I can offer people and how I move. All of this comes together. So I think it comes down to this lack of engaging with practice. We don't study this. There is very little instruction of it.
The most famous ceiling on Earth was painted by a man who called himself a sculptor and who didn't want the job at all. Rome, 1508. An impatient, domineering Pope Julius II orders Michelangelo onto the scaffolding. Michelangelo would rather be carving marble. He'd been promised the project of his life, the Pope's colossal marble tomb. The ceiling tore him away from it. Refusing a pope was dangerous. Accepting meant fresco, a technique he'd barely practiced, on a scale no one had attempted. He nearly walked away and complained the work was destroying his body. For roughly 4 years he worked bent backward, paint dripping into his face. The Torture became the most influential painting in Western art, hundreds of figures finished by a man who swore he was never a painter. And no, despite the legend, he didn't lie on his back. He painted standing, craning upward, which only makes it stranger. So the ceiling we call divine inspiration may really be a monument to pressure and a job he hated. Genius, or just a man who couldn't say no to a pope? Tell me below.
I just chose to listen to the warnings that everyone ignored. When Steve Jobs came out and said, I will never give my children an iPad. You should never give your children an iPad. They will mess them up more than anything you know. When he physically said that, do not give your children an iPad, I chose to believe that a little bit. When Microsoft's executive, Pierre Laurent, then followed that up by saying, there is a war for the eyeballs of children and no one has done a long-term study into the impact of brains that these things are going to have. Don't give them to your kids. Like right from the off, the red flag was there for me. This wasn't Jordan with his schizo thoughts. This was me looking at the execs of Microsoft and Apple. Like one of them said he would willingly take hand-to-hand combat than give his child an iPad. These people in Silicon Valley put their children in an entire different education system. Steiner Waldorf education, where there's no electronic devices until 12. Because the brain physically cannot comprehend this amount of flashing lights and dopamine. Like, it can't. And then people say, oh yeah, but your kids are going to be less good on technology. No, they're not. Because the rate of technological development right now is so quick that iPads are irrelevant in 12 years anyway. The children that are being given iPads and children that are getting aggressive and sulking when their iPad's being taken off them, I think that's going to manifest as some very dark stuff. When
even adults are suffering from the addiction. Music.
Beekeepers are given all resources, empowered to act on their own judgment.
Good.
Outside the system.
Sure you want to do this, honeybee?
The subliminal is deep on this one.
Do you know that the second highest containing nicotine food or plant in the whole world is eggplants?
No.
It's tobacco and then eggplants. Do you know that every nightshade vegetable has nicotine in it? Zucchinis, tomatoes.
Yep.
These are all nightshades. Did you know red tomatoes have nicotine in them? And do you know that green tomatoes have 10 times more nicotine than a red tomato does? Does anyone in the world know that every white potato you've ever eaten has nicotine in it? Nature made them or God made them? My opinion, God made them. And then why did he design us to have nicotine receptors in every part of our body if we weren't supposed to benefit from the nicotine in these plants? That's because nicotine's not addictive. And then I'd like to ask you at home, if nicotine is so addictive, why aren't more people addicted to veggies? But they are begging to go outside for their tobacco breaks of smoking because they added pyrazines to make nicotine addictive. We altered it. All these people are preaching they reverse diseases with eating. It's curing cancers, curing autoimmune disease if they will just focus on eating those veggies more primarily than processed foods and refined carbohydrates.
So a cult is not simply a weird or unpopular group. Academically, a cult or a new religious movement known as an NRM is a group that is new, outside the mainstream, and organized around a charismatic leader or a novel belief system. However, popular usage and sociological analysis often refer to high control or high demand groups, whether they're religious or not, that exert significant influence over members' behavior, thinking, appearance, relationship, and identity as part of cult culture. So here are the common characteristics of cults or a high control group. The number one thing is a charismatic, unquestionable leader. A single leader, often seen as divinely anointed, uniquely gifted, or infallible, holds absolute authority. Members believe that the leader alone has the truth, and dissent is framed as betrayal, sin, and spiritual danger. Number two is thought reform or ideological totalism. Using methods identified by scholars like Robert Lifton, these groups reshape how members think. Simplified, absolutist worldviews, kind of a us versus them. We have the truth. These people don't. That means they're our enemy. They have loaded language and jargon, typically using a lot of militant language. They suppress doubt. Doubt is a sin. You can't question the leader. You can't question the doctrine. If you do, you're questioning God or you're questioning what's right. They also reinterpret personal experiences to fit the group doctrine. Number three is behavioral control.
Another discovery that corroborates the earlier 1446 BC date for the Exodus would be the Amarna letters. This trove of 382 stone tablets was also discovered in Egypt over the course of the last 150 years and date back to the 14th century. Many of the tablets were inscribed by various Canaanite rulers to the Pharaoh of Egypt, expressing distress and fear that all of their lands were being taken over by a mysterious people the Canaanites called the Habiru, also translated Apiru. These letters are pleas for help. For example, tablet EA 286 is from Abdi Hiba, the mayor of Jerusalem, and mentions that all of the mayors are lost and the Habiru have plundered the lands. And the same mayor of Jerusalem wrote in tablet EA 288 that the Habiru have taken all of the cities of the king and he is surrounded on all sides. Tablet EA 299 was from Yapahu, the ruler of the city of Gezer, and mentions that Habiru are stronger and are about to destroy them, matching up with biblical chronology. And these letters certainly don't describe a ragtag group of outlaws. These letters chronicle an organized conquest.
This is a beginning of documentation that our government is involved in kidnapping children. I'm going to show you next. Keep going with those. Excerpts from a U.S. Customs report. This report is Department of the Treasury, and in February 1987, February 5th as a matter of fact, 2 well-dressed men with children varying in age from 2 to 7, 6 of them as I recall, were arrested in Tallahassee, Florida. From the arrest, the police traced the van up to Washington, D.C. to an organization known as the Finders. The U.S. Customs was notified, and this is the documentation from a U.S. Customs report. You can flip the page. To make a long story short, the Customs learned that the Metropolitan Police Department obtained search warrants, went in, and found evidence of satanic ceremonies, found documentation that children were being kidnapped off the streets and exported and flown around the world, London, Germany, to the Far East and the Middle East. And this is, as I said, the report. Go back to that last page that you had on there. This is beginning.
So I talk about a lot of scary things on this page, but nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever top my fear of the Amazon River. Did you know the Amazon River is one of the most dangerous places on earth? It is massive, stretches all the way from Peru, ending in Brazil. There are creatures that live within these waters that haven't even been discovered yet or touched by humans because they're unreachable. And what's even crazier about all that stuff I just said is the fact that my mom actually grew up there, and the stories that she has will literally send chills down your spine. So I'm going to share them with you guys. So to start off, my mom lived in the Amazons from the time she was 7 years old up until she was 9. My grandmother actually owned a restaurant at one of the ports. This port had a bunch of different boats that would come throughout the day, and they would do exchanges. This is how they were able to get supplies in and out. She says that after 6 p.m., no one was allowed anywhere near the water because the creatures that would come out of this water were literally looking for any little chance they could get to snatch you up. And they were usually looking for humans. She tells the story of this old man that was rowing his boat across the river to get to the port because he was going to sell plantains. So he had this old wooden boat that he was rowing, and when out of nowhere, he started to feel like turbulence under his boat. So he started to row faster, thinking like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. Like he's just trying to get to the shoreline. When out of nowhere, this massive animal comes out of the water. She says they used to call this animal La Manta because it was in the shape of a blanket. It was like this massive blanket, thick blanket that came out of the water and then just wrapped itself around the man and the boat and took the man and the boat down with it. The only thing that ever came back up was the boat because the boat was made out of wood and it floated, but the man was never seen from again. My mom also says that this was a normal occurrence of having random boats just showing up to the shore empty because the occupants obviously never made it across the river. She says that this was so normal that people were desensitized to it. So whenever they would see an empty boat, they would just say rest in peace and keep it moving. She says this was like a daily event. She told me a bunch of other stories that I can make a whole separate video about, but the main reason they ended up having to move after 2 years was because trafficking was very huge in that area. Like little kids were going missing left and right. Since my grandmother owned a restaurant, my mom and like her sister, her older sister, would help out. She has an older sister who was 14 at the time. There was a man that wanted to buy her off of my grandmother. He told my grandmother that he would give her this amount of money, and in exchange, he would take her and give her a good life. My grandmother, of course, declined, and she was like, you're not taking my daughter anywhere. Like, she's 14 years old. This man then became obsessed with my aunt and would show up at the restaurant, would follow them. It got to the point where my grandmother became so like worried that she moved because she was worried that one day they were going to break into her house and take her daughter. My mom also talks about the indigenous people that would come in, like from the jungle, that lived deep within the jungle. They would come out, sell their stuff, and they would be back home before 11 a.m. Let me know if you guys want a part 2.
All right.
This is a breakthrough in the future of computing. That pink liquid, it's full of living human brain cells. And here's the crazy part. Scientists are combining those brain cells with traditional silicon to build computers that are alive. It's pretty wild. Now, this is a brand new industry of technology called biocomputing. These are real human neurons that can actually think and learn for themselves. Now, if you're like me, you're probably wondering one thing. Why are they doing this? It feels a bit much to be growing human brains just to put them into computers. Well, listen to this. It turns out human brain cells have extremely rare abilities to process things without being trained. Normal computers have to be taught to solve problems. It's why AI models take so much energy and training data to build. But as soon as you add brain cells to a computer chip, they don't really need as much training. They kind of start figuring out what to do on their own, just like a human would. Now, because of this, these biocomputers are super efficient. A regular supercomputer might use 40 million watts of power to solve a complex task. The human brain can do it in just 20. That's 2 million times more efficient. And this means these biocomputers could become the secret weapon to solving humanity's hardest computational challenges. But there is just one massive problem. Brain cells tend to die when their temperature deviates from 98.6 degrees, and computers generate a ton of heat. So we have this wild situation where living computers could be the solve for everything, but it's almost impossible to keep the brain part alive. Today, companies like Cortical Labs are selling these biocomputers for $35,000. But over time, scientists are going to figure out how to get them more stable and accessible. It's wild to say, but I think soon we're going to have living computers that literally think like humans.
You think there's an energy transference?
Of course it is.
You are basically giving her your DNA, your imprint, your blueprint for life, and you're putting that in her. And if she's unstable, then good luck. Good luck with that.
It's crazy you say that. I was clearing my trauma through like hypnosis, and he asked like how many sexual partners have you had, and all of their souls showed up.
Wow.
So there's a I think he called it a soul tie or something. Yeah. So like you're tied to that person, even if it's been years.
Yeah, no, there's an energetic, and one of my teachers, she's a little out there, and I asked her for the copy, the citations, because everyone always asks for these. She's like, I can't really tell you, but they say that the DNA can transfer into the brain.
Wow.
And you've heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard.
And I was like, she's like, not old, but she's 80, she's older. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, that's why it's not good for women to have many sexual partners.
Yeah.
The Vatican is the long-standing procurer of children for the elite. It turns out that drinking children's blood is an anti-aging device. This is just really sick and disgusting, but it's a fact. It's a chemical fact. And if you drink adrenalized children's blood, this is a doubly effective anti-aging device. It's gone on throughout history. This is not new. The Catholic Church is all about power over people. The Catholic Church is all about, we'll tell you what to think, don't think for yourselves. And the same is true of all religions that have dogma. Okay? Any religion with dogma is a false religion. It's a false God. God is us. God is in we, the cosmos, and we do not need a religion to be good human beings that advance to the next level of civilization. So religions right now are part of the deep state. They're part of the control mechanism.
Anywhere in the realm of 1953 to 1961, Eisenhower supposedly had a meeting with gray aliens and potentially others. And in that meeting, apparently a treaty or deal was made with the aliens. Part of that deal was the abduction of humans in the United States for genetic material. A lot of lore around that. We've remote viewed that. That kind of stuff did happen. Part of the deal, the treaty that was made, had to do with the government coming clean on it before a certain point in time. And they're supposed to come clean on it before a geophysical event happens on the planet. They have not done it because there is infighting on keeping technology secret.
What if 9,000-foot trees once covered the earth, but something cut them down and their remains are the mountains we see today? It sounds impossible. But according to one theory, some of the world's most unusual mountains aren't mountains at all. They're ancient tree stumps. Supporters point to places like Devil's Tower, with its massive column-like formations and strangely flat top. From above, they argue it looks almost like the stump of an enormous tree, and similar formations can be found around the world. But here's where the theory gets even stranger. We already know that wood can become petrified, slowly turning to stone while preserving its original structure. So what if this happened on a scale we've never imagined? Ancient cultures around the world also told stories of enormous world trees, stretching from the earth into the heavens. Trees like Yggdrasil in Norse mythology. What if these stories weren't entirely mythology? What if Earth once looked completely different, covered by trees thousands of feet tall?
And if these mountains really are their petrified remains, it leaves us with an even bigger question. What happened to the giant trees? And what could possibly have been powerful enough to cut them all down?
I want to talk about the hollow moon.
There's a lot of weird things that have happened with the moon. Like, first of all, the moon is too big to be here. We've never found another system that has this giant moon right next to us like this. We haven't found
That's in
a
Bali
moon
right
that
there.
has such a perfect orbit like this. During one of the Apollo missions, as a seismic test, they crashed one of the rockets into the moon, and the phrase is, the moon rang like a bell for over an hour. If you set off like seismic charges here to measure sound waves that go through the Earth, as they go through the Earth, they slow down. The moon, they don't do that. The sound waves sped up and started to bounce all around in there. In one of the moon craters, I think it's the Aristarchus crater, there's this blue glowing light that just appears from time to time and then goes away. And then you've had people who have seen pictures, like I've talked about Carl Wolf. He's called in to fix some imaging equipment at NASA. He sees another young guy and he's like, oh, Carl, you got to see this. He's like, what am I looking at? This is the backside of the moon. There's like cities there and stuff. Carl, unfortunately, was met with an untimely death. He got hit by a car when he was riding his bike. So we don't know much more from Carl.
That's why you need to be careful what music you listen to. Because if music can get rid of a demon, it can attract one. And most of the music out here now attracts demons. And then you wonder why your lifestyle, you're grooving and bumping in the car. But when you get out, you can't figure out why your life is standing still. Sometimes it's the music that you're listening to, because whoever you listen to, what's on them attaches itself to you. Rick Joyner said that he was in a vision, and the Lord told him. He said, in the last days, the enemy will bring up singers and other musicians, he said, and they will baptize millions of people into the demonic end. Whoever you accept, you get what's on there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I reject a lot of stuff in what we call church. You know, not all gospel music is gospel.
Most people get shocked when I tell them this. But did you know that Pfizer makes 90% of the cheese in the United States?
No
Cheese is one of
way.
the most consumed foods in the world, especially in the U.S. So if you control cheese, you control a massive part of the food supply, and Pfizer quietly sits in the middle of it. To make cheese, you need just 4 ingredients: milk, salt, cultures, and rennet. And guess who took over the rennet industry? Pfizer. About 90% of all cheese in North America uses a genetically modified version of rennet produced by Pfizer. Real rennet comes from calves' stomachs. Pfizer's version is made by inserting cow genes into a genetically modified fungus, and then we wonder why half of America can't tolerate dairy.
That right there. That is why if you live in America, you have to detox regularly, because you just don't know what's in your food. So comment below detox and come to my 100% free whole body detox mini masterclass.
I'm a 39-year-old anesthetist from Egypt. 12 years ago, I was working in a small hospital in a rural city of Rosetta. At the time, the hospital was under some maintenance. In that particular day, I was on duty. There was nothing in the operating theater that afternoon, so I was in my room on the 5th floor surfing the web on my netbook. I stayed in the TV room for a while when suddenly the PA system announced my name to head immediately to the ER. Before I moved, one security man came running and he told me there was a big road traffic accident that involved a school bus and that everyone available is needed downstairs. I rushed to my room. I found the new furniture in place, so I closed it and ran down to the ER. When I entered the ER department, I noticed a new color on the walls. The ER was green, but now it's blue with silver decorations everywhere. While I'm helping the children, I asked one nurse when they changed the color of the ER, would all the hospitals have the same pattern? She looked at me confused and asked me, what new color? It was always like that. I got confused, but I didn't pay much attention to that. There were so many injured children. There were many doctors, pediatricians, surgeons. A lot of them were new faces to me. I was working in this place for several years, so I know almost everyone. I was asking myself when all those new people came, I should be more social but I didn't expect anything bad. So I went outside of the ER to get some fresh air, and I won't forget what I saw. The hospital place is near the Nile, the Western branch, the Rosetta branch. So that's what I usually see when I leave the hospital. But when I walked out of the door, I simply saw the Mediterranean. Rosetta City is near the Mediterranean, but it's not that close. I was sure that I wasn't dreaming. I can tell you, as I am breathing right now, I was awake. I was treating children. I was calculating drug doses. My mind was clear enough to know that I was not dreaming. I ran to the 5th floor to my room to change my clothes and grab my things before I leave the place. Once I opened the room, I noticed the usual furniture. There wasn't any new furniture, no new beds, no new wardrobes. And I stood there for a moment, totally lost. Then I heard someone calling me. It was a security guard. He told me that there's a big accident downstairs that involved a lot of children and they needed everyone down there. I kept staring at him without any response. I went down to help. It was the same children, the same injuries, but the ER color was correct. I recognized the faces around me. Confused and my hands shaking, my legs barely carried me. It was easy to manage the children since I knew them already. My colleagues, the usual daily group, no more new doctors, asked if I was okay and told me that I was pale. The next few days were like hell. I had nightmares. I wasn't able to think clearly during the day. As I said, my mind was clear enough to pay attention to the details of drug doses, scoring of injuries, and triage. I only told this story to the older anesthetist and later to my wife because whenever I remember it, I remember the horrible feelings I had, and I cannot figure out how I ended up walking into a parallel ER.
The Rothschilds were trying to start a world war since 1885 because the Zionist International Congress at Basel, Switzerland, has called for 3 world wars. At the end of the Third World War, they would control the entire world. 1 billion Christians and fighting a war to the death against 1 billion Muslims, which will leave Israel in charge of the world, which was predicted at the 6th International Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland in 1896. So after Zionist Congress in 1896, you had World War I, World War II, and now we have World War III. At the end of World War I, the Rothschilds organized a number of groups called, one was the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London. It's called Chatham House. And that is the think tank of all of Europe today. And although its headquarters in London, the real headquarters are in Brussels, which is the headquarters of the Lambert family, which is part of the Rothschild family.
It's all planned.
I think I had a encounter with an angel several years ago. It was at a very dark part of my life. Transgenderism was really bothering me at the time, and I felt like maybe I was one of the only people speaking out about it. And I had this internal battle in my head. It was me convincing myself that maybe I'm wrong here. My wife and I, we were vacationing in Sedona, Arizona, and there's this older gentleman in there. He started trying to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to him. I'd never seen this guy. I turned and I square up to him. He immediately read my mind from front to back, and he said, "You don't need to worry. That's not your battle." I just looked at this guy in the eyes and I was like, how are you inside of my head? And then a whole series of other events happened within minutes right after that. And that's basically what brought me to Christ. Was there a possibility that that was my guardian angel?
Yes, it can be, actually. Usually when you see those kinds of experiences which are not normally explained, one of the other things that you'll notice is you'll never be able to find that guy again. They sometimes intervene in such dramatic ways in order to correct our path so that we don't end up going down the wrong path.
Angels are real.
The most beautiful figure in this painting is a monster. Painted in 1562 by Peter Bruegel the Elder, the fall of the rebel angels hides its meaning in transformation. Start at the top, a burst of pale light, heaven, and pouring out of it a stream of bodies, falling. These are angels. Now follow them down. Watch what happens to their bodies as they fall. At the top, they are still winged, still radiant. By the bottom, they have become monsters. Fish, insects, shells, claws. Bruegel painted the exact moment sin turns beauty into something grotesque. Mid-fall, mid-transformation. Now look at the center, a figure in golden armor, calm-faced, sword raised, a red cross on his shield. That is the Archangel Michael. His foot rests on the belly of a dragon with 7 heads. And here is the detail most people miss. That dragon is 2 different villains at once. Lucifer, the proud angel from the beginning of the Bible, and the 7-headed beast from Revelation, the very end of it. Bruegel fused the start and the end of the world into a single creature. Now look just below Michael's foot, a demon with the black and yellow wings of a real butterfly, a soft, strawberry-shaped body, a flower for a tail. The museum calls it one of the most seductive demons ever painted. Evil, disguised as something beautiful. And now look at the bottom left corner, just above Bruegel's signature. A half-lizard demon has bent down to bite its own leg and turned its backside to you. The oldest insult there is, hidden in a painting about the war for heaven. Most people will look at this and see chaos. You now see the exact instant beauty becomes a monster. The hidden language of symbols gives you that for every painting you will ever see. Link in my bio.
The man who lives under that shield is named Moses Amschel Bauer, money changer. He lends coins and currency at interest, tracks debt, manages exchange rates between the currencies of a dozen different German states, and keeps meticulous records in a ledger that almost no one outside this alley will ever see. When Moses dies, his son inherits the trade. His son's name is Meyer Amschel Bauer. Meyer is born in the same year as that shield, 1744. Bauer in German means farmer or peasant. It is a surname that is not obviously connected to financial practice. He apprentices with a banking house in Hanover called Oppenheimer. When he returns to Frankfurt, he is a man who understands how money moves between powerful people. He understands that the men who move it are far more powerful than the men who spend it. He stops using the name Bauer. He begins calling his family Rothschild. The word comes directly from what hung above his father's door. Rothschild, Red Shield, the German words folded into a single surname, and using it to create a name that would function in the European commercial world while retaining a connection to that identity. In Ashkenazi Jewish tradition, the Shield of David, the Star of David, the hexagram, is one of the oldest and most widely recognized symbols. The Rothschild family crest, when it was formally established, incorporated this symbol alongside a fist clutching 5 arrows, one for each of Meyer Amschel's 5 sons, deploying a financial methodology that is a system with identifiable components. The first is the multinodal family network, 5 sons, 5 cities, all operating under a unified strategy with coordinated intelligence. The third component is the financing of conflict. Meyer Amschel Rothschild's foundational client relationship was with Wilhelm IX, Landgrave of Hesse-Kassel, one of the wealthiest rulers in Germany. Meyer managed Wilhelm's money, and in doing so, he gained access to the financial flows connected to international military contracting. When Meyer died in 1812, he left his sons a formula: lend to governments at war, collect with interest when the war ends, and maintain relationships with all sides so that the winning side is always in your debt. The 5-city network that Meyer established was explicitly designed to prevent any single government from having full visibility into the family's operations. The network's geographic distribution was a structural defense, and the family's deliberate avoidance of public record. They maintained correspondence in a private cipher, used code names in financial communications, and destroyed or withheld large portions of their archive from researchers. It's consistent with the operational security of a network that understood that legibility to any single authority was a liability.
But don't you find it interesting that the dating of Göbekli Tepe has not opened the door to redating other sites around the world? So when you talk about the stuff in Egypt, nobody's really open to saying, maybe this is 10,000 years old. Should we look again?
Right.
You know, that story has been written. There's been a period on it, and it's been put to bed.
Not only that, there's actual geological evidence. And this is where Robert Schoch came into play. You know, I have had him on the podcast before, and I remember watching that documentary on the mysteries of the Sphinx. And he proposed that there's water erosion on the outside of the Temple of the Sphinx. And he's taken photos of that erosion and brought it to other geologists and said, what do you think this is? And they said, well, that's water erosion. And then he shows them where it came from. They're like, I don't want to have nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Just kidding. It's wind.
Crazy. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
A man with direct links to the highest levels of the Epstein class and elite pedophile ring has been found dead. The authorities are calling it non-suspicious. But this story is explosive. On his resume, Daniel Seard was a model scout. In reality, he made his fortune providing underage children to the Epstein class. Mentioned more than 1,000 times in the Epstein files, he was firmly inside the system, until he chose to expose it. Weeks ago, he came forward with bombshell allegations. He was tired of Israeli bullying. He was tired of protecting the state of Israel with his silence. Then, he went further. He confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive, that his death was staged and that he was expatriated to Israel, that he was an Israeli intelligence asset, that he's still an Israeli intelligence asset, using vile compromise to blackmail US politicians into betraying their country and committing treason. On Tuesday, he was found dead in extremely suspicious circumstances. If this was supposed to silence him and protect Epstein, it backfired. Because the elite are getting desperate. And they're making sloppy mistakes. And if the Charlie Kirk case taught us anything, is that sloppy assassinations don't hide the truth. They expose it.
Every book in the library, every book in the colleges, every book in the universities, every book on this planet is misinformation. It's misinformation. So, which is initiated by the Draco reptilians as far back as 6,000 years ago.
The reptilians really came into control and started to be able to manipulate what was going on the face of the planet about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. It is true that they have different masking technologies to be able to be in a room and look like a human, but usually they're in underground bases in various places on the globe, as well as in a huge area in Antarctica. The southeast region has a large number of underground caverns that are kept extremely warm, too warm for humans, by geothermal heat. It's a perfect place for all of these colonies that the reptilians have. They're basically cities, huge.
Now, you know why no one is allowed to go to Antarctica.
The final stage of spirituality is going back to being materialistic. And I know that sounds wrong, but stay with me, because there is a phase that almost everyone goes through. You start waking up, you start questioning your entire life. The money chase starts feeling empty. The ego starts feeling exhausting. So you detach, you simplify, you go inward. And for a while, that feels like the destination. But then something else happens. You start realizing that rejecting the material world is just another form of ego. That saying, oh, I don't care about money is just a sophisticated way of being afraid of it. That choosing poverty as a spiritual identity is still an identity, still a performance, just a different costume. True freedom is not needing to reject anything. The most evolved person in the room is not the one who gave up everything. It's the one that can hold everything without being owned by any of it, who can have the money without becoming the money, who can enjoy the life without the life becoming the prison. And that's the part nobody talks about, because spirituality is not absence of desire. It's the freedom from being controlled by it. So when you see someone who has built real wealth, real success, real abundance, and is completely at peace, still grounded, still themselves, that's not contradiction. That's the destination. The goal was never to want less.
Yes.
The goal was to want freely.
A parasite that can control your behavior, and you might already have it. It doesn't make you sick. It doesn't cause any symptoms. It does something much more terrifying. It changes the way you think. It's called Toxoplasma gondii, a microscopic organism so sneaky that scientists describe it as a mind control parasite. And the craziest part is you don't get it from something exotic. You can get it from petting a cat, cleaning a litter box, or eating certain undercooked foods. Because once it enters your body, it doesn't attack your stomach or your bloodstream. It heads straight for your brain. And what it does there is pretty freaky. In animals, it shuts off fear. It makes mice walk right up to cats as if they want to be eaten, because that's how the parasite completes its life cycle. But humans can get infected too, and millions of us are. Studies show it can shift behavior, increase risk-taking, alter decision-making, and in some cases even affect personality traits without you ever noticing. And because the symptoms are almost invisible, you could carry it for decades without realizing something inside you has been... There's a parasite...
It's called the Toxoplasma gondii, and it actually rewarps humans' brains. If you've ever heard of the crazy cat lady, this little parasite is the culprit. This little bugger is so stealthy and smart that once it's into mice, that the mice then become attracted to cats. And then the cats, of course, consume the mice. And then it gets back into and re-releases into the cats. So it's the only known host for the entire cycle. And it's so common, it affects 1 in 3 people worldwide. You know, our grandparents and great-grandparents were aware that this existed and did an annual cleanse. But somewhere along the line, we stopped that practice. I think today it looks pretty different because of the heavy metals and the toxins. But we should still be continuing that important value of annual cleansing. If you're ready to tackle an annual cleanse, comment the word protocol below and we'll send you exactly how we tackle it.
All right, folks. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope you like my lineup. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, likes, hype, and hit that bell notification so you won't miss my next video. Have an awesome day. God bless.